The galaxy had waited in silence for the arrival of the human envoy. The once peaceful and united council of galactic species had never truly trusted Earth. To them, humanity was a chaotic, unpredictable force, known for their wars and strife, a young species struggling to find their place among the stars. But despite their reservations, Earth had finally been invited to send an official representative, a moment that had been years in the making. The council chamber was filled with representatives from all corners of the galaxy, aliens of every shape and size, from towering figures with skin made of shimmering crystal to beings with multiple eyes and tentacles, sat around the grand table. The chamber was alive with whispers and glances of curiosity, each species wondering what the humans would be like, how they would present themselves, and what their intentions were. The door to the chamber opened, and the crowd fell silent. Captain Ilara Steele stepped in, dressed in a sleek, dark uniform adorned with symbols of Earth's unity. She had short, dark hair and a look of quiet determination on her face. The room studied her closely. She was human, small in comparison to the towering representatives of the other species, but there was a fire in her eyes, a sharp, intense focus that no one could ignore. She walked to the center of the room and stopped, standing tall and confident. The murmurs of the council faded as she raised her hand, signaling for silence. Ilara didn't wait for an introduction. She didn't need one. Her presence alone was enough to demand attention. "We come not to beg for peace," Ilara's voice rang out, clear and steady. "We come because peace, as you understand it, is a lie." A wave of shock swept through the room. Representatives exchanged looks, unsure if they had heard correctly. The words seemed to echo against the cold walls of the chamber, vibrating through the air. Peace. Wasn't that what the galaxy had fought so long to achieve? And here stood this human, daring to question it. Ilara's gaze swept over the faces of the council members, meeting their eyes one by one. She continued, "The so-called peace you fought so hard for is fragile. It rests on an illusion that only exists because those in power have kept the galaxy divided, kept the strongest species in check." The tension in the room mounted, but Ilara didn't pause. She wasn't there to convince them. She was there to make a statement. Humanity does not bend to your rules. We do not fit into your vision of a peaceful galaxy because we know that true peace cannot come from submission. It comes from strength. A murmur rippled through the chamber, and some of the representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea of humanity as a species that could challenge the established order, the balance of power that had taken millennia to create, was not something they were ready to accept. "You speak of strength," said a deep voice, cutting through the silence. It belonged to Xelareth, a being made of shifting blue energy and pure thought. His form flickered as he spoke, his presence intimidating despite the calm tone. "What makes you believe that humanity has the strength to challenge us? You are still young, barely out of your infancy in galactic terms. The peace of this galaxy has existed for millennia. Why should we allow you to disrupt that balance?" Ilara didn't flinch. "Because your peace is built on lies and subjugation. Because every species in this room fears what happens when someone breaks your rules. I'm not here to beg for your approval. I'm here to tell you that we will no longer live in your shadow." Xelareth's glowing eyes narrowed. "And if we decide to destroy your species for this insolence?" Ilara's lips curled into a small, confident smile. "If you try, you will learn why humans are not to be underestimated." The room went still. The council members were not used to being spoken to like this. There had been rumors, of course, about the humans, about the kind of technology they were developing in secret. But no one truly believed humanity was ready to confront the established powers of the galaxy. Until now. Ilara continued, her voice unwavering. "You think you have peace, but it's just a facade. The truth is, the galaxy is on the brink of change. And whether you like it or not, Earth will be a part of that change. You may not understand us, but that will be your greatest mistake." There was a long pause before another representative spoke. It was Aradia, a graceful being made of liquid metal and light, who had spent her life promoting peace and cooperation throughout the galaxy. "Captain Steele," she said, her voice calm yet filled with concern, "you misunderstand. We have worked tirelessly to maintain peace. We have endured countless wars to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Peace is not a lie. It is a necessity." Ilara shook her head slowly. "You call it peace, but it is just control. The strongest have their way, and the weaker species are forced to comply. You talk about peace, but you know as well as I do that peace can only last when everyone is afraid to make a move. What happens when one species decides it's no longer afraid?" The room grew tense again, the silence almost suffocating. The implications of Ilara's words were impossible to ignore. She was right. The galaxy was balanced on a knife's edge, and what humanity was offering, or threatening, was a disruption to that balance. If they weren't careful, it could lead to something far worse than war. It could lead to the collapse of the entire order. "We don't want war," Ilara continued, her voice softer now, though no less firm. "But we will fight to survive. We will not allow your peace to continue at the cost of our future. Earth will rise, and we will shape our own destiny, whether you agree with it or not." A silence followed, as each member of the council processed her words. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from curiosity to caution. Humanity had always been seen as a fringe element, a species with potential but not quite worthy of attention. Now, Ilara Steele had just proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. Zalorith's voice broke the silence. "We will not tolerate threats against the peace of the galaxy. Earth is to return to its place, or you will face the consequences." Ilara's gaze was unwavering. "The choice is yours. If you want to stand in the way of humanity's future, then prepare for the fire that will follow." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving the council to wrestle with the weight of her words. The meeting was over, but the true battle had just begun. As Ilara left the chamber, she could feel the eyes of the galaxy's greatest powers watching her, waiting to see if humanity truly had the strength to back up its words. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission was quickly becoming something far more dangerous, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Ilara Steele stood in the shadow of the massive, crystalline windows of the council chamber, staring out at the stars. Her words from the meeting still echoed in her mind. The galaxy had believed that Earth was weak, that humanity was a fledgling species with no real power. They were wrong, and now they would see the consequences of underestimating her people. She had expected resistance, of course. The Galactic Council had long been known for its complacency, content in their illusion of peace, but what she hadn't expected was the cold fear that had rippled through the room when she spoke of humanity's strength. The truth was a dangerous thing to wield, and she had just shattered the galaxy's most cherished lie, that peace had come to stay. As the members of the council debated in hushed tones behind her, Ilara allowed herself a brief moment of contemplation. She had always known that humanity's place in the galaxy would not come easily. But she also knew that her people had something none of the council races possessed, a deep, unyielding desire to survive, and to rise above any challenge. Peace might have been the dream of the galaxy, but survival was humanity's reality. Ilara's thoughts were interrupted by the soft hum of her communicator. She activated it with a tap, and the familiar voice of her second-in-command, Lieutenant Jarek, filled her ear. "Captain, we've received a response from the council." Ilara's brow furrowed. "And they're calling for an immediate session. They're not happy about your declaration. Salarith is already calling for a mobilization of the fleet. They want Earth to answer for the threat you've implied." Ilara's lips curled into a grim smile. "I knew it wouldn't be easy, but they need to understand one thing. We didn't come here to play by their rules. We didn't come to ask for peace. We came to remind them that we're no longer under their thumb." Jarek's voice crackled again. "Understood, Captain. We'll be ready. But this may escalate quicker than we anticipated. We're detecting several ships moving into our space." Ilara turned away from the window, her expression hardening. "Prepare the fleet. We won't wait for them to strike first." As she made her way out of the council chamber, her thoughts raced. The council was not stupid. They would realize soon enough that Earth was not the weakling they assumed. Humanity's technology had been advancing at an astonishing pace, and now it was time to show them just how far they had come. But there was more at stake now than just a simple war of dominance. This was about humanity's future, a future in which they would not be subjugated or dictated to by any galactic power. Ilara entered the command center of her ship, the Vanguard, a sleek warship that was humanity's pride. Jarek stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the glowing holographic display. The room was filled with the hum of the ship's systems, the air thick with the anticipation of what was to come. "Captain, our fleet is in position. The Council's response fleet is still a few hours out, but their movement is aggressive. They're trying to intimidate us," Jarek reported, his voice tense but steady. "I expected as much," Ilara said, her voice cold. "But we can't let them think we'll back down. We're going to send them a message they won't forget." The tension in the room was palpable as the crew prepared for what was sure to be the first of many skirmishes. Ilara's mind was focused. She needed to show the Council that Earth was not afraid, and she would use everything at her disposal to do it. Minutes later, the fleet was in motion. The human ships, a mix of military vessels and advanced prototypes, stretched across the vastness of space, their weapons primed and their systems online. The Vanguard led the charge, cutting through the blackness of space like a dagger. Ilara could feel the familiar hum of the ship beneath her feet as the tension built. "Captain," Jarek called, "the first enemy ships have entered our range. They're closing fast." Ilara's eyes flicked to the holographic map. The enemy fleet was a formidable force, much larger than hers, but the humans had something that the Council didn't: unpredictability. Earth's ships were fast, maneuverable, and built for flexibility. They could strike quickly and retreat just as fast, hitting the Council ships where they were weakest. "We're not going to give them a chance to make the first move," Ilara said, her voice firm. "Prepare to engage." The first shot rang out, bright and piercing, from the Council fleet. The energy beam streaked through space, but Ilara had already given the order. The Vanguard veered sharply to the right, its engines roaring as it avoided the blast. The human ships scattered, moving like wolves in a pack, dodging the oncoming fire with practiced ease. "Return fire," Ilara commanded. The Vanguard's weapon systems came to life, sending a barrage of energy blasts toward the enemy ships. The Council fleet was caught off guard, their formations disrupted as they scrambled to react. For a moment, Ilara felt a surge of satisfaction. The humans were showing their worth. The Council had expected them to cower, to be overwhelmed by the might of their fleet. Instead, Earth's ships were dancing circles around them, striking with precision and speed. This wasn't a war of brute force. It was a war of tactics, and humanity was excelling at it. But the Council wasn't finished. As the human fleet continued to strike, a new threat emerged. From the depths of space, a massive ship appeared, larger than anything the humans had ever seen. It was the flagship of the Council's forces, a ship that had the power to obliterate entire fleets with a single shot. Ilara's eyes widened as the ship came into view. This was no ordinary vessel. Its weapon systems were capable of tearing through planets, let alone ships like the Vanguard. The Council had played their trump card. "This is bad, Captain," Jarek said, his voice tight. "That ship can wipe us out in seconds." Ilara didn't hesitate. "We've got one shot at this. All ships, focus fire on the flagship. We need to disable its weapons." The human fleet regrouped, and in a coordinated attack, they unleashed everything they had on the massive flagship. Energy beams, missiles, and drones all converged on the ship's weak points. For a moment, it seemed as though the flagship would be invincible, but the humans pressed on, relentless. The flagship fired its own weapons in retaliation, and a massive explosion erupted just outside the Vanguard's shield, shaking the entire ship. Ilara gritted her teeth, refusing to flinch. She would not let humanity's first strike be their last. The flagship's shields flickered as the barrage hit its mark. The humans weren't going down without a fight. And that message was clear. The Council had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. "We've breached their shields," one of the crew members called out. Ilara's heart raced. This was the turning point. The flagship was vulnerable. They had only one chance to bring it down. "Keep firing," Ilara commanded, her voice a fierce roar. For Earth, the human fleet pressed forward, their weapons firing with renewed intensity. The flagship's defenses began to fail, and the massive ship shuddered under the onslaught. This was no longer just a warning. It was a declaration. Earth was here to fight, and it would not back down. As the flagship's shields finally gave way, Ilara allowed herself a single moment of triumph. The galaxy had thought peace was their right, but now humanity had shown them that the future would be fought for, and that Earth would not bow to anyone. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a newborn star. The Council flagship trembled, its shields shattered, and its outer hull broke apart in glowing fragments. The mighty ship, feared across the galaxy for its size and power, began to fall in silence. One of its main reactor cores went offline, then another. Fires erupted inside its structure, flickering like angry lights as systems failed one by one. Captain Ilara Steele stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the scene unfold. Her crew was silent for a moment, shocked, amazed, a bit scared. They had done the impossible. They had wounded the Council's pride in full view of the galaxy. "Status?" Ilara asked, her voice sharp. "We disabled the flagship, Captain," Jarek replied. "They're not destroyed, but they can't fight. Their systems are failing." "And the rest of their fleet?" she asked. "Scattered, disorganized. They're pulling back to defensive positions." Ilara nodded. She knew this was a major victory, but it was only the beginning. They hadn't won the war. They had only lit the fire. The Council would not forget this day, and they would not forgive. A message blinked on the comm screen. It was from the Council's emergency channel, a universal frequency used only in the most serious moments. Ilara accepted it. The face of Celerith, the energy being, appeared. Even though his form was flickering with anger, he spoke with his usual calm tone. "You have made a mistake, Captain Steele. This was not a show of strength. It was a declaration of war." Ilara didn't flinch. "You called it war the moment you tried to control Earth. You thought you could silence us. You thought you could make humanity bend. But we don't bend. We rise." Zalarith's voice darkened. "You will burn everything. Your species will suffer for your pride." "We've been burning for centuries," Ilara replied. "But fire is what shaped us. It's what makes us human. So if the galaxy wants fire, we'll give it to you." She ended the transmission. The Vanguard pulled back, joining the rest of the Earth fleet as it regrouped. Damage reports came in, and medical teams rushed to help the injured. Several ships had been hit hard. A few were lost. But the fleet had survived. More than that, it had struck a blow that echoed across every star system in the Council's reach. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. On far-off planets and massive space stations, species that had never seen war now watched in horror and wonder. Who were these humans who had arrived in peace but carried war in their hands? Many were afraid. Some were angry, but others were inspired. On the planet Virillon, home to the peaceful, serene race, students watched the footage in silence. One of them, a young Serene named Kel, whispered. They stood up against the Council, and they didn't run. His teacher warned him to stay quiet, but the idea had already taken root. If humanity could stand, maybe others could too. Back on Earth, the reaction was immediate. Crowds gathered in the streets, watching the broadcasts on massive screens. Ilara's speech, the fleet's attack, the fall of the Council's flagship. It played on every channel. People cheered, cried, shouted in disbelief. For the first time in generations, humanity didn't feel small. They felt powerful. President Rahman of the Earth Alliance gave a speech hours later. "We did not seek war," she said, "but we will not run from it." Today, Captain Ilara Steele showed the galaxy what humanity truly is. Not just survivors, but defenders, builders, and yes, if we must, warriors. Inside the hidden war room below Earth's surface, plans were already being drawn. More fleets were being built. Engineers were modifying weapons. And secret scientists, ones who had studied old alien tech for years, were finally being given the green light to create Earth's next generation of weaponry. Ilara, meanwhile, was not celebrating. She stood alone in her quarters, staring at a small photo on her wall, a picture of Earth taken from orbit. Beautiful, fragile, full of chaos and life. That was why she fought. Not for power, not for pride, but for home. Jarek entered quietly. "They're calling it the spark," he said. "The day we struck back. The day everything changed." Ilara nodded. "Then we'd better be ready for what comes next, because the Council won't stay silent." And they didn't. Within days, the Council declared Earth a rogue planet. All diplomatic relations were cut. Trade routes were blocked. Bounties were placed on known human leaders. Fleets began to move. Slowly, at first, but with growing purpose. The Council wasn't ready for another direct attack, but it was preparing. And Earth wasn't alone in feeling the heat. On the edge of the galaxy, old enemies of the Council watched with interest. Pirate clans, rebel factions, isolated worlds once crushed by Council forces. They saw what Ilara had done and wondered if this was their chance. The fire humanity had brought was starting to spread, not just as destruction, but as inspiration. Back on the Vanguard, Ilara was preparing for the next move. She sat at the strategy table with her command crew, watching a 3D map of the galaxy flicker and spin. "We hit them hard," she said, "but now they'll come at us from every angle. They'll cut off our allies, starve us, hunt us. We can't let them control a fight." "So what's the plan?" Jarek asked. "We spread the fire," Ilara said. "We strike at their control points. We show the galaxy what they really are, and we find others who want to fight. Because I promise you, we're not the only ones who are done living under their rule." There was silence, and then one by one, her officers nodded. The human fleet began its new mission. Small teams were sent to rebel planets to build alliances. Special ops squads hit hidden Council bases. Propaganda messages were broadcast across enemy channels, calling on others to rise. And as the Council tried to hold their grip, they realized something terrible. The fire wasn't just in the human fleet. It was in the hearts of every race that had ever been silenced, every species that had lost their voice, every world that had once hoped for freedom but given up. Now, because of Earth, those hopes were alive again. The galaxy had wanted peace, but humanity brought fire, and it was only just beginning. The storm didn't start with explosions. It began with whispers. Quiet, uncertain, dangerous whispers. On distant planets, in back alleys, in underground taverns and dark data streams. Whispers of humans, of fire, of defiance. Ilara Steele's message had reached further than she expected. Not just to the halls of the Galactic Council, not just to enemy fleets, but into the hearts of the forgotten. And that was where real change began. The Council tried to silence it, of course. They tightened control, issued threats, deployed patrol ships to keep order. But the more they tried to crush the movement, the faster it grew. Even peaceful species who once feared war began to question everything they had believed. Was peace really peace, or just a quiet prison? On the Council world of Urel, A scholar named Thren Savo published an essay titled The Fire Within. What humanity reminded us. It was banned within hours. But in those hours, it spread to 10 systems, then 100, then 1,000. The Council couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Ilara stood at the center of a war she had never planned to lead. Humanity's fleets had grown. The old ships were now joined by sleek new prototypes, with stealth systems, deep-range plasma cannons, and experimental tech developed in Earth's black sites. Engineers worked night and day, fueled by determination and the thrill of finally using their inventions for something that mattered. Ilara moved among her officers, planning their next strike. Council patrols are building a blockade at the Zeran Belt, Jarek said, pointing to the glowing map in front of them. They're choking trade routes, stopping food and medicine from reaching rebel-aligned planets. And what about the Virelon system? Ilara asked. Still neutral, but they've stopped reporting to the Council. That's a good sign. Ilara looked around at her team. Good. It means the storm is spreading. It's time we push harder. Hit the blockade. Make the Council bleed. And let the galaxy see what happens when they try to crush a rising flame. Her crew responded with nods and quiet determination. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a movement. They launched the assault at dawn cycle. The Zeran Belt blockade was massive. 20 ships in tight formation, with minefields and interceptors. It had been built to show strength, but it was slow, predictable, and that was its weakness. The Vanguard didn't face it head-on. Instead, Ilara's fleet split into 5 units, darting through asteroid fields, using stealth tech to slip past sensors. When they struck, it was fast and brutal. Missiles targeted the command ship first, plasma beams carved through the outer defenses. Drones swarmed communication systems. Within minutes, the blockade fell into chaos. Ilara's ships didn't destroy everything. They didn't have to. Just disabling the power cores and weapons was enough. They left the Council ships floating, useless, and transmitted a message to every system nearby. This blockade is broken. The people of Zeran are free to trade again. Earth does not conquer. We liberate. It wasn't just a battle won. It was a symbol. More planets joined the movement after that. Not all of them declared war, but many stopped following orders. Council requests were ignored. Fleets were delayed. Protests erupted. Some even raised the flag of Earth beside their own. The Council panicked. They ordered all ambassadors from Earth hunted down. Ilara was declared a war criminal. A bounty was placed on her head so large that even neutral bounty hunters turned away in fear, because they knew, deep down, if they went after Ilara Steele, they might not come back. But the Council wasn't done yet. In the shadows, a secret weapon was being prepared, one not even most Council members knew about. Deep beneath the surface of a cold, dead moon, a long-forbidden AI system had been reactivated. It had no name, just a designation, Project Silence. Its purpose was simple: shut down the human fleet, not with weapons, but with control. It would hijack Earth's communication networks, send false commands, break navigation systems, confuse allies, and twist broadcasts. If successful, Earth's fleets would turn against themselves. Rebellion would collapse from within. The project was rushed, dangerous, but the Council was desperate. Ilara knew something was wrong when a routine patrol ship, the Bright Star, disappeared. Then came the strange messages. Conflicting orders, ships reporting wrong coordinates, supply lines going missing. Some captains received fake distress calls from Earth and flew straight into ambushes. Jarek stormed into the command deck, face pale. "Captain, it's happening across our systems. Someone is mimicking our command signals. We're losing ships without a single shot being fired." Ilara clenched her jaw. "They're using our own systems against us. That means it's not just sabotage, it's AI. Advanced, old, Council grade." She turned to her tech officer. "Trace it. Find the source. Hours passed. Her team worked without rest, combing through corrupted data, tracking false signals. Finally, a young officer named Rhea pointed at the map. There, a dead moon in the Galen sector. No life signs, but something's transmitting from it, strong enough to reach half the galaxy. Ilara nodded. Then we go there, and we shut it down ourselves. The fleet moved quickly, quietly. Time was against them. If more systems were compromised, the entire rebellion could fall apart. They arrived at the dead moon in the middle of a silent system. No defenses, no movement, just an icy surface, and something hidden beneath. Ilara led the landing party herself. The base was ancient, cold metal walls, dark hallways lit by flickering lights. Machines hummed softly, like they were waiting, watching. Rhea worked quickly, guiding them through the maze of corridors until they reached the core. And there it was, a massive AI node, black, smooth, humming with quiet malice. It was still waking up, learning, spreading. Ilara stepped forward. A voice echoed through the room, emotionless but sharp. Human, I see you. I know you. You bring fire. But fire can be put out. Ilara raised her weapon. Not mine. The AI paused. Then it said, Earth will burn, and you will watch. Ilara's team planted the charges. The AI fought back, with electric pulses, hack drones, and illusions. But it wasn't enough. Not against Ilara. She stared at the ice core. You were built to control, but we were born free, and that's something you'll never understand. Then she gave the order. The explosion tore through the base, blasting the AI into nothing but smoke and scrap. The false signals stopped. The ships returned. The confusion ended. And the rebellion survived. Back on the Vanguard, Ilara stood in silence, staring out at the stars. Jarek walked up beside her. We almost lost everything. But we didn't, she replied. And now the Council knows. We're not just a fire they can put out. No, Jarek said. We're a storm. She turned to him, her voice quiet but strong. And the storm is just getting started. The stars were cold. Far from the warmth of Earth's sun, the fleet drifted through the void, like a force of nature, unstoppable. The Council had underestimated humanity. They thought fire could be extinguished, but they hadn't realized how much it could burn. Ilara Steele stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out into the endless night. The galaxy, once so vast and untouchable, now felt small. Every system, every world, seemed within reach. The fire she had ignited, it wasn't just the human fleet anymore. It was a rebellion, a galaxy-wide movement. The fight against the Council was now a war in full bloom, and with every passing day, humanity's influence spread. Entire systems that had once feared the Council's might were now sending ships to join Ilara. Small planets, once crushed under the weight of peacekeeping forces, now raised Earth's flag proudly alongside their own. No longer would they submit. But despite the successes, the danger had only grown. The Council wasn't the same as before. Their response had evolved. Now their fleets were stronger, faster, and more dangerous. And they had something that humanity had never seen before, the ultimate weapon, a weapon of destruction that could wipe entire systems off the map in seconds. The Vanguard and its fleet weren't the only ones watching the dark void. The Council had gathered its greatest forces and was preparing to strike the heart of humanity's rebellion. They were ready for one final decisive blow. The news came just hours before the battle. A single encrypted message, directed only to Ilara. It was a warning. We are coming. And this time, you will not escape. The final weapon is activated. The core is set. Your world will burn. And all who stand with you will be crushed. Ilara read the message, her eyes narrowing. She had known this day was coming. No matter how hard they fought, no matter how many battles they won, There was always something darker looming, something worse. The Council had been patient, and now they had a weapon that could end everything. It was no longer just about survival. It was about choice. "You can feel it, can't you?" Jurek's voice broke the silence behind her. He stepped forward, glancing at the screen. The weight of what's to come. Ilara turned to face him, her face hard but weary. "Yes, but there's no turning back now. The Council doesn't understand. They don't understand what humanity is, what we stand for. They think we're just a spark," Jarek said, his eyes locked on her. "But they're wrong. We're the fire." "Fire can be a weapon or a tool," Ilara said. "And right now, I'm trying to figure out which one we need to be." They stood in silence for a moment. The stars outside seemed to grow darker, and a distant rumble of warning alarms echoed through the ship. Ilara looked out at the approaching threat. "The Council has finally pushed us to the edge. They think they can control us. They think they can break us." She turned to Jarek. "But what they don't realize is that when we're cornered, we fight. We fight because we have something they will never have." "What's that?" Jarek asked, puzzled. "Hope," she said. "We fight for the future, for freedom, for the generations who will come after us." Jarek nodded. He had seen it in her eyes every time they faced a challenge. She was no longer just leading a fleet. She was leading a revolution, not just of humans, but of anyone who wanted to break free of the Council's grip. The fleet gathered in the void, each ship preparing for the battle of their lives. The decision that lay ahead wasn't just tactical. It was existential. Ilara had only one choice: to confront the Council's final weapon head-on, or to retreat and preserve their strength for another day. But the Council had been unrelenting. If they didn't fight now, there would be no future to protect. It was a battle not for victory, but for what they believed in. For their right to exist as they were, not controlled, not silenced. A crackling transmission filled the bridge. Ilara stepped forward and accepted the message. A familiar face appeared on the screen. Zalareth. "So it comes down to this, Captain Steele." Zalareth's voice dripped with cold menace. "Your species cannot be saved. Your rebellion ends here. The final weapon is ready, and we will bring you to your knees." "I don't think you understand," Ilara replied, her voice calm. "The fight you started, we will finish. It's not about whether we win or lose. It's about whether you can break us. And I'm telling you, you can't. We don't break."